Well, I'll bet you I'm gonna be a big star. Might win an Oscar, you can't never tell. The movie's gonna make me a big star, 'cause I can play the part so well.
You're watching the C-Spine Show. I'm Dr. Craig Callewart. Please like, follow, and subscribe. Nutrition has been in the news lately. Obviously, RFK, making America healthy again, changing kind of the paradigm of how we're supposed to be eating. You all may recall that since I was a kid until recently, we had a food pyramid where we were supposed to eat very little oils, fats, perhaps a little bit more meat, but the basis of our food triangle was supposed to be carbohydrates. And it's now pretty well widely believed that that's led to this explosion of obesity and diabetes. And so a couple years back, the federal government said the recommendations were no longer be a triangle, but be a square. So that is a greater proportion of fats and meats to carbohydrates. The idea being that fat is satisfying so that people don't overeat as much, because when one eats carbohydrates, particularly sugars, there tends to be a rebound of hunger later due to insulin, so a rebound desire to eat, and that then leads into the cycle of snacking to feed the insulin hunger that is naturally satisfied by eating appropriate fats and oils. So that has been a big shift in what the government has been teaching us, and it has also led organized medicine beyond primary care to also start looking more at nutrition. And I can honestly say for the people over 50, particularly those who are struggling to rehabilitate through exercise or struggling to recover from surgery, that there is a lot of nutritional deficiency out there, surprisingly so. Not so much deficiency of calories, but there's that too, but mostly a deficiency in quality of food. So once again, people are snacking quite a bit. They're eating things out of the box, carbohydrates that are processed. They're eating things that are cooked at fast food on a grill. So they're missing quality proteins. And by that, I mean proteins that contain all the amino acids, or at least many of the amino acids, and proteins that are cooked with the appropriate amount of fat to be palatable, as well as to be healthy. And kind of one of those examples are the egg. The chicken egg is a mix of the white protein on the outside, which is albumin, as well as the yellow fat on the inside, which has a bit of cholesterol in them. And so, again, when I was growing up, we were told not to eat eggs because they're high in cholesterol. Medical science now is learning that what the amount of cholesterol one's eating, and I'm speaking in generalities, the amount of cholesterol that one eats doesn't really affect the blood cholesterol as much as genetics, medications, exercise, and a few other things. And there are exceptions to that. But so that has led me in my practice to start to really inquire for those people who say, look, doc, I just don't have the energy to exercise, or I'm just not healing, what's wrong? Really sit down and talk to them about nutrition. How many calories are you eating a day? And equally important, how much protein are you eating? Because the body is basically protein, and most of that protein is contained in the muscle. But what people kind of don't remember is that bone, as we see in the spine, is living, and it's calcified, but it's calcified protein. So it expands with use, just like a muscle expands, it contracts. With disuse, bones can atrophy. They can atrophy from disuse, but they can also atrophy from improper nutrition. So that's where it's important to receive the right amount of vitamin D and the right kind of vitamin D, as well as a supplement that goes with it, vitamin K. But at the end of the day, we have to remember that bone is primarily protein that has calcified through the use of vitamin D and vitamin K. So those are some of the kinds of things we go through in the office. And again, when it comes down to this feeling of fatigue, it's often poor nutrition, inadequate calories, not enough protein, not enough B vitamins. Many people also never go outside, so even though they take vitamin D, they never activate it. So if they're not outside much, then they need to take the active form of vitamin D, which is vitamin D3. And then one also has to have liver that works well to metabolize those other vitamins we're discussing to make all this work together. So nutrition has gotten to be pretty important in spinal surgery, because we also know that people who have enough nutrition after the surgery are less likely to develop infections. They're more likely to heal the way we want them to heal, that is, grow bone where they need to grow bone, don't grow bone where we don't want to grow bone, and also increase their muscle strength. And so orthopedics has started more and more to borrow from what has been learned by bodybuilders and weightlifters to supplement their diets to build muscle mass. Or taking creatine, it would be one example. I've had kids who spent time doing bodybuilding, and they were very careful to eat certain kinds of proteins and eat it multiple times a day and then take the supplement. So I've watched it both from a professional level and a personal level. But as we see these things happening in Washington, it really does affect our daily life, which is why I make a trip every year, sometimes twice a year, to Washington to talk to our legislators about, look, you've done this in the Beltway, but this is how it's going to affect us. And a very good example of that has been the news that came out that Medicare is now reducing the payment for physicians to do a hip replacement to about $1,100. And so that includes the surgery, the hospitalization, and all the care for the next 90 days for $1,100. So, and that's less than major auto repair. So you can see the message from the federal government coming out is stop doing hip surgeries. So when I go talk to legislators, that's one of the things I bring up. And then also we will talk about funding for nutrition. You're watching the C-Spine Show. I'm Dr. Craig Callewart. Please like, follow, and subscribe. One of the common nutritional problems I see in the office are women after their childbearing years, typically in their 40s or 50s, and boom, they got a pinched nerve in their neck going into their shoulder, or they've got a pinched nerve in their back going into their hip, and they just can't really get comfortable. And they say, you know, I haven't had any problems with my neck or back, haven't been in a car accident, don't do heavy lifting. Why is this happening? I saw my primary care doctor. They did an MRI and said everything's okay. Well, in reality, it isn't. But in all fairness, it is a subspecialty problem. So it was good that we saw a subspecialist. But the problem is their spinal alignment is changing. So instead of being straight, the spine is starting to shift to one side or shift to the other side. And that's because of softening of the bones. And this is very common in women as they get into their 50s and 60s, more so Caucasian races and Asian races, but still does affect all women and to a lesser degree men. But that softening of the bone comes from two different reasons. One is called myelomalacia, which is one is called osteomalacia, which is softening of the bones due to vitamin and nutritional deficiencies, which we talked a little bit about earlier. But most of it is just what we know as osteoporosis, which is loss of calcium from the bones. And it's known to happen more so in certain families, so there is a genetic component to it. It's also known that women who breastfeed quite a bit literally have the calcium sucked out of them, and many of those women don't replace the calcium in their bones later on in life. It's also known to happen to men or women who stop making hormones, the male and female hormones, the testosterone, the estrogen, the progesterone. So they then develop softening of the bones, but it can also be from thyroid problems too. People who have deficiency there can soften the bones. So particularly a long time ago, when hysterectomies were done and the ovaries were routinely taken, we saw many women then in their 60s who had the softening of the bones. The ovaries are not routinely taken anymore, but that whole group of people that has a hormonal deficiency that leads to softening of the bones then changes the alignment of the spine. And so when a person goes and has an MRI or has a CAT scan or has an X-ray laying down, everything kind of looks okay. The discs are where they're supposed to be. They don't see any pinched nerves. But the real test for spinal alignment is to stand up straight, full weight bearing, full gravity. Sometimes we even put weights in people's hands to put extra gravity or extra weight on the spine. Then ask them to bend forward, ask them to bend side to side, whatnot, and we check the alignment of the spine. If they have osteoporosis or softening of the bones, then the alignment oftentimes shifts and we can make the diagnosis. Again, you don't see that with a laying down X-ray or a laying down CAT scan or a laying down MRI. And the treatment for that is the treatment of osteoporosis, which again is exercise and nutrition. And for nutrition, it's protein, vitamin D, vitamin K, and then there's all kinds of medicines out there that can stop the osteoporosis from worsening, and there's even a few of them that can begin to rebuild back the bone. But as I go to treat people in their 50s and 60s, I'm always looking at spinal alignment because I know the effect of gravity over the decades does cause a shift in the bones that often is not seen on the MRI. Thank you for watching the C-Spine Show. A new show is uploaded at 9 p.m. every Wednesday.
Well, I'll bet you I'm gonna be a big star. Might win an Oscar, you can't never tell. And who's gonna make me a big star? 'Cause I can play the part